Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Prem Sagaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopira Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Gang Jamuna Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Go Premanandi. All glories to the Son of the Bodhis, all glories to the Son of the Bodhis, all glories to the Son of the Bodhis. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadane Nirvishesha Shunyavani Pasane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 11 Chapter 3 Verse 25. Sarvatra Amesh Eshvarang Viksham Kaivalyam Anikita Vivikta Chiravasanam Santosham Yena Kenachit. Sarvatra, everywhere. Atma, for one's true self. Ishvara, for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anviksham, meditation by keeping continuously in view. Kaivalyam, solitude. Aniketatam, having no fixed residence. Vivikta chira, scraps of cloth. Vasanam, wearing. Santosham, satisfaction. Yena kenachit, with anything. Translation: one should practice meditation by constantly seeing oneself to be an eternal, cognizant spirit soul, and seeing the Lord to be the absolute controller of everything. To increase one's meditation, one should live in a secluded place and give up false attachment to one's home and household paraphernalia. Giving up the decorations of the temporary material body, one should dress himself with scraps of cloth found in rejected places or with the bark of trees. In this way, one should learn to be satisfied in any material situation. Purport: Kaivalyam, or living in a secluded place, indicates a place free from material disturbances. Therefore, one should live in the association of Vaishnavas, where the common goal is advancement in Krishna consciousness. Especially in Kali Yuga, if one tries to remain physically isolated from all others, the result will be degradation or insanity. Aniketatam means that one should not be intoxicated by ephemeral satisfaction in one's home sweet home, which will vanish at any moment by the unforeseen circumstances produced by one's previous activities. In this age, it is not actually possible to dress in tree bark in modern cities, nor to wear mere scraps of cloth. Previously, human culture accommodated those practicing tapasya or penances in the interest of spiritual advancement. In this age, however, the most urgent necessity is for preaching the message of Bhagavad Gita throughout human society. Therefore, it is recommended that Vaishnavas dress with clean and neat cloth, covering the body decently, so that the conditioned souls will not be frightened or repulsed by the severe penances of the Vaishnavas. In the Kali Yuga, the conditioned souls are extremely attached to material sense gratification, and extreme austerities are not appreciated, but are instead considered abominable denials of the flesh. Of course, austerity is required for spiritual advancement, but the practical example set by Srila Prabhupada in successfully spreading the Krishna consciousness movement was that all material things should be used to attract people to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, Vaishnavas may at times adopt ordinary dress to serve the higher principle of distributing Krishna consciousness. In any case, one should learn to be satisfied in any material situation so as to prepare for the moment of death. According to Bhagavad Gita, at the time of death, the particular consciousness we have created in this life will carry us to our future situation. Therefore, human life can be seen as a type of practice for successfully fixing one's mind on the absolute truth during the severe trials of death. So this is a section here on looks like great austerities. Is actually a instructions on following the guru and performing one's worship of the Supreme Lord. So we should understand that this is not an impersonal type of description. It is the relationship between a Vaishnava guru and his disciple. The original verse was Tasmad Gurum Prapajeta Jigasusre Uttamam Sadde Parajanatam Brahman Upasamasrayam. So one should approach a spiritual master and inquire about the highest truth. And the guru should be fixed in Shabde, Pare, in the scripture and in realization of the Lord. Therefore, these verses here are describing the conduct of a person after that point, after he surrenders to the spiritual master. It doesn't actually say what type of spiritual master here, whether it's Shiksha or Diksha or whatever, but later on we see that he describes how one has to practice brahmacharya and study svadhyaya, etc. So this seems to be more in the Vedic line, that they're talking about studying the Vedas and whatever like that. In spite of that, of course, we can understand that some of the people who study the Vedas are Vaishnavas, some are Mayavadis or whatever. They could be either way. or at least impersonalists, and talking about Brahman. So, of course, the instruction for serving the Guru would serve either type of person. If we look in the Vedas, we often find instructions about surrender to the Guru in the Mundaka Upanishad and Chandogya Upanishad or whatever. And there it's very clear that they're studying Upanishads and all about Brahman, etc. Of course, we take that as worship of Vishnu, but nevertheless, it's a Vedic type of relationship, in which case those persons would not be Diksha Gurus but Shiksha Gurus, because the Diksha Guru would be the father, because he gives the Brahma Gayatri. And then they go to the Gurukul and study under someone else. So they're learning all these esoteric things about Brahman from someone in the Gurukul, so that he was the Shiksha Guru, more we can say. So therefore, those statements about surrender to Guru, etc., apply to the Shiksha Guru, which doesn't mean it doesn't apply to a Diksha Guru also. So one should also regard the father, who is also the Guru in one sense, the Diksha Guru. One also have to give him respect because he gives the mantra, which is the Vedas. So in any case, the respect is shown to the Guru, and then one follows the orders. So we have a whole list of types of conduct of the disciple here. And among them, of course, was we have here meditation. We have Kaivalyam also here, which generally means impersonal, but we can take that in a more personal way also. And anvikshi usually means some sort of analytical study, so it often refers to jnana type of Vedanta study, etc. But again, we can take that as concerning the Supreme Lord, because we have Atma Ishvara mentioned just before that, to investigate about the soul and about Ishvara in all things. Here there is a description of a simple life where one wears worn out clothing and is satisfied with anything that comes into the material world. So it's more or less a very renounced type of existence. One lives in a solitary place, etc. And that, in the previous verses, we find that there was mona, etc., silence, etc., non-violence. So these are common qualities listed in the Shrutis or the Vedas, Upanishads, for advancing in spiritual life. Along with their study of the Vedas, they would practice austerities of the sort, wearing simple cloth and eating simple food, etc. And of course, the goal of all this is that one should ultimately worship the Supreme Lord. So actually that's made clear in the next verse. These verses here can sound a little impersonal about Kaivalyam, etc. But the next verse mentions Sradam Bhagavate. So one should have faith in the Supreme Lord and the Shastras, which describe the Supreme Lord. So directly it's indicating a Vaishnava type of activities. So we can't take it as simply being impersonal. But the conduct we see is, we can say, quite severe in one sense, where one renounces everything, lives very simply, lives in a solitary place, wears simple clothing, simple food, etc. So it's a common feature of conduct of saintly people in ancient times. So, in the purport, we find that there is, we can say, an apology. Actually, in the modern world, we can't really do this. And we see examples of our acharyas like Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur or Srila Prabhupada. They didn't set example by wearing a rejected cloth and things like this, and living in solitary places, anikirtan, etc. So, on the other hand, they were dedicated to preaching, so they emphasized utilizing everything in the service of the Supreme Lord. So we find a little bit of a contrast here between the traditional conduct of a sadhu and the modern conduct of a sadhu. And we can see that's exemplified in some of the conduct of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. We see that people were shocked when they saw him with a car. You know, you shouldn't have a car. You shouldn't ride in a car, etc. Yeah. So he did these things, and of course he associated with the British and invited them to Mayapur, etc. You know, so he did things which were unheard of in terms of what a sadhu should do. But he did these things as a matter of preaching. So therefore, though the traditional conduct is such, and in ancient times it was nothing, it was not difficult to do also, it was an accepted norm, and people did that. In the modern world, in order to preach, we have to sacrifice some things. One is we can't, if you want to preach, we cannot live in a solitary place. We have to live in cities and other places like that to preach to those persons. And similarly, we cannot just simply wear rags and rejected cloth, etc. So we have to come up with some sort of standard according to respectable society also. So some adjustments are made in terms of preaching. But the spirit has to be the same, nevertheless, that we are not attached to things for our own body and for our own comforts. That's the whole idea of all of this simplicity of living and clothing and eating, etc. So the Vaishnava, even if he does live in a city and is not doing such austerities, he has to practice yukta vairagya. So he uses things, but it is still vairagya. In other words, the detachment that is there in these descriptions should also be there when the person is associating with material objects in this world. He should also not be attached to them. So, in other words, the traditional conduct is to dissociate oneself from material objects, and that way one is not disturbed. Yukta vairagya means we engage objects in the service of Krishna. We do not reject them, but we maintain a detachment from those objects for our own enjoyment. Rather, we're using them to serve Krishna. So that is the whole point of yukta vairagya. So it is not a new concept, because we see in Rupa Goswami's mentioning this in Nectar Devotion 500 years ago. So it can be practiced at any time. Nevertheless, in ancient societies and even 500 years ago, some people were still literally practicing what is done here. They would live in a solitary place, etc. However, this is according to qualification. So therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes it clear that yes, you can follow this conduct, but you have to be qualified for it also. You have to have a level of detachment. So in Jaiva Dharma, he tells the story of these Babajis, and there's one person who's associated with the Babajis, but then at nighttime there's this problem with the woman. So he gets rejected by them because he's actually not being a Babaji, because his former wife keeps visiting him and this and that and whatever, so it creates a scandal. So in other words, if one is not qualified, one should not act in that position of renunciation. So in that story, there are many, many Babajis there, and they're very, very nicely qualified. But then we see some people who were not qualified, so therefore they were told, you don't, go away, don't do this. So according to qualification, one could accept that status, whatever. Otherwise, one follows normal life, and normal life means one follows household life, and household life means that one lives in society and acts like everybody else. So one doesn't practice this type of severe renunciation. But within that household life, then one still continues to worship the Supreme Lord. And one should use whatever one earns or whatever for glorification of the Supreme Lord. So in relation to Diksha, where it's described how the Guru gives a mantra, and then Jiva Goswami says, this is for rich householders, because they can use the mantra for deity worship, and then they can engage all their money in buying things for the deity. So in this way, they engage their wealth in devotional service rather than in Maya. So, therefore, the householders are encouraged to spend their extra wealth for glorification of the Lord somehow or other. If they don't do that, then they can feed the Vaishnavas or do whatever like that, hold festivals and glorify the Lord, sponsor events for the Lord, etc. So somehow or other they should engage their wealth in the service of the Lord. At this, and this is showing detachment again, so they're practicing yukta vairagya also. Yeah? And those who are qualified, then they may renounce completely and wear simple cloth, etc., if they are qualified. So this means that in Vaishnavism and Lord Chaitanya's movement, all people of all types of qualification participate. So those who are more attached can be grihastas, and they can also worship the Lord and chant the holy name. And those who are detached, they can do the same thing. So in either way, one can worship the Supreme Lord and advance in devotional service. So it's a process for everyone. So therefore it is said that whether one is a householder or whether one lives in the forest as a sannyasi or a babaji or whatever, in any case, one chants the name of the Lord and engages in devotional service, and one can reach perfection that way. So therefore the ashramas as such, we can say, are external. Whether the sannyas ashram or the vanaprastha or the grihastha or the brahmachari, they're all external things, and in any of the ashramas one can advance in devotional service by the proper method of engaging ourselves in service of the Lord and utilizing everything for the service of the Lord. And those who are renounced, that is vanaprastha, sannyasis, and brahmacharis, then they act in a slightly different way, but they're still doing the basic, the same devotional processes. So actually not much different, only they are doing that service in a different ashram, and so therefore they can all advance in devotional service.
A lot of stress is being given one to surrender master,
Huh?
bona fide spiritual master.
Yeah.
So that can be referred to Siksha, bona fide Siksha Guru and Vedic Guru. Or,
Yeah.
and in the purport, the translators have mentioned that unless you take Diksha, you can get pure love of Godhead.
Where, here?
In the previous, one of the previous long purport.
Oh, I think there was a verse,
People,
There's a verse somewhere mentioned also in Hari Bhakti Vilas. Yeah, yeah. So that is because before the advent of Nam Sankirtan, how do you become a Vaishnava? You have to worship the Supreme Lord. To worship the Supreme Lord, you need mantra. To get the mantra, you need Diksha. So there's no way of worshiping the Lord unless you took Diksha. With the coming of Nam Sankirtan, everybody can worship the Lord by saying Hare Krishna, and they don't need Diksha. So it's a little bit different. So the scriptures glorify Diksha and the necessity of it from the point of view of no Nam Sankirtan, before the advent of Nam Sankirtan. So therefore, very necessary. How are they going to worship the Lord unless they get the mantra? And how do they get the mantra? They need Diksha. So that's why it's necessary as a Vaishnava to take Diksha. But if it's Harinam, you don't need Diksha. So that's an exceptional thing, a case.
when Kali Yuga crosses Nam Sankirtan,
Yeah.
no need of Diksha.
So no need of Diksha. Yeah. So that is true. And we see that Lord Chaitanya, when he preached, he didn't talk about Diksha at all, did he? He goes around and says, you simply chant the holy name everywhere. That's all he said. He went to South India, chant the holy name, chant the holy name, chant the holy name, like that. He didn't talk about Diksha or anything. So, that of course is so. That does not mean one does not accept Guru. Because in order to chant properly, we need knowledge. And we get the knowledge from somebody. He acts as a guru, a Shiksha Guru. So we do need knowledge, definitely. So therefore we need association of devotees to advance, even with the Harinam. However, at the same time we see that though Harinam is the most important without Diksha, still we see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took Diksha. All the Acharyas took Diksha also. So they carried the process. And they worship deities also. So we see that along with Harinam, we have sadhusanga, shravana, and we have deity worship as very important elements. And do the deity worship, you need the diksha. So therefore, diksha is also emphasized for that, because generally, along with the chanting of the holy name, we do deity worship. So Jiva Goswami says that because people's hearts are disturbed by doing deity worship, they can engage all their senses and their mind nicely. So this helps with steadying the person, so that chanting the holy name also becomes better. So there's an assistant to chanting the holy name. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, so technically speaking, if they want to do Pancharatra, they should take that diksha. They should take it and use the mantras properly, and worship the deity in quite a strict standard. That's generally the process.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, we also see that as we see Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya ISKCON, and we see in his, the way he conducted was that disciple in his sense, I mean what I understand is means Diksha. Because there were so many people, people were coming, people were going. But then he said, if you want to become my disciple, you have to follow these principles. You have to chant some X number of rounds, 16 rounds.
Yeah.
And then you you can become my disciple. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if we see in ISKCON, although chanting of the holy names is the yoga dharma, but Srila Prabhupada also, I mean, the way he increased the, when we talked about devotees, usually it meant his Diksha disciples. So was it just because it was the initial period, and was it because of that? But
Because of?
was it that because it was the beginning of the movement, and then how do we identify between people who was just chanting and nobody knew what else they're doing? Or is,
Well, there's different levels of chanting. So everybody can chant, and even the demons can hear. So that's why we can preach to everybody, let them hear. And if they have a little faith, we can preach to them. Then, when they become more serious, they get to another higher level. They follow principles. They regulate their chanting, 4 rounds, 16 rounds, whatever like that. So that's a higher level. And they, of course, are obviously studying scripture, doing shravanam, taking instructions from others. So there's different levels of advancement there. So, in that sense, they accept guru. So the guru acts in 2 functions. One is shiksha, the other is diksha. So diksha is, in ISKCON, becomes a very broad category because it includes the shiksha. But technically speaking, the diksha is the mantra you get, which we call second initiation for deity worship. That's the actual diksha. Now, Prabhupada extended that to first initiation also, so in which we get a name, which is part of Diksha, Pancha Samskara. But largely, the main thing is the mantra. If you don't get the mantra, actually you're not initiated. So if Lord Chaitanya never got his 18-syllable mantra, he wouldn't be initiated. If he just got a name, so-and-so Das, that wouldn't be initiation. So you have to get the mantra, then that's called real Diksha. That's the essence of Diksha. The other things, the name and the other things, fine, you can do. But that is the essential part, so, which is in our second initiation, actually. But we don't emphasize that so much, because when we're chanting Hare Krishna, we're not chanting these mantras anyway, and most people don't even know what they mean. Even if they get them, they're chanting them, they don't know what they mean, and they just chant them for a few minutes a day. But the main progress is through chanting Hare Krishna. So there's much more emphasis on that. So in that sense, that's the real diksha in one sense, or it's the real means of advancement, though the technical diksha is the second one. So we kind of shifted the importance, which is nothing wrong with it, because it actually is, Harinam is more important. So we emphasize the first initiation more than the second. Even the second was the technical diksha, or scriptural diksha. Huh? Yeah. Yeah, so that's why some people say, well, not really necessary to just take second initiation. But of course, then you're not really initiated, scripturally speaking. Because later on, let's say you become a guru and you have to initiate people. What mantra are you going to give them if you don't have a mantra? So the Diksha line is through the mantra. That's, of course, we see, is it important or not? We can say, well, not so important because Hare Krishna is more important. But, if you want to chase technical Diksha, it goes through the mantra.
Maharaj, can we also see that the qualities that are mentioned here, they are in Vaishnava context, but these qualities we don't see. So can we say these are more applicable to Bhajananandis? If they're to Bhajananandis?
Well, actually, this is the brahmachari. Technically, it's the brahmachari here. Talks about brahmacharya and all this. Oh, of course, we can say it could be the Babaji also, like that. Definitely, it's not the grihastha.
Maharaj, I think in ISKCON the challenge, because our preceding acharyas have set very strong examples of Yukta Vairagya, so I don't see this becoming anytime a challenge, especially as it's mentioned the purport, people are very attached in Kali Yuga. But I think the challenge is in Yukta Vairagya, to what extent we come close to the objects of senses while being detached using Krishna's service. Yeah. Because that's a internal line. Nobody knows from outside. So one may be surrounded by objects and be completely detached. One may be surrounded by objects fully attached. But because we encourage Yukta Vairagya, so it may be seen that it is tolerated.
Yeah. Well, I think if it is dangerous, it becomes dangerous for a person, sooner or later the effects will show. And maybe Krishna will make some arrangement to take everything away also. As Prabhupada, when he get everything went away, his business failed, everything failed. And he said, okay, Krishna's will. Krishna's taking all my wealth away, so to show me some renunciation. So we have to depend on Krishna's arrangement also. But if one becomes very attached, then technically speaking, one will be blocked in one's advancement, and therefore one cannot advance in devotional service also. So one will have problems in bhakti as a result if he becomes attached to the things he's supposed to engage in Krishna's service. They become weeds in devotional service.
But we see Haridas Thakur.
Well, it's both actually. If in our part it is. If you look at the Radhakund, then they would say Goshanandi's, Bhajanandi's prominent or whatever like that. And of course we have Jagannath Das Babaji, Gorkishar Das Babaji, some of the exalted Babajis as well. So it's not just Goshanandi, but we can emphasize that, I can say. Yeah.
But we can see this Pundarika Vidyanidhi or Ramananda Rai are epitome of Yukta Vairagya because they were in such a high position, but still they're...
Prataparudra, others, kings, Ambarish Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj. They were like, kings of the whole world actually, and very detached at the same time.
In the aspect of ashram, Maharaj, you said ashram is only external, it doesn't matter so much. But apparently it appears that the other ashram than Grihastha ashram seems to have more opportunity for pure devotional service in one sense.
Than the Grihastha ashram?
Than Grihastha ashram. Well,
we'll see in the examples in the Bhagavatam, many of the great devotees are Grihasthas. Yeah? They weren't renounced. There are sannyasis there, but we have a lot of Grihasthas like Ambarish and Dhruva and Yudhisthira Maharaj, and so many people are Grihasthas also. It can be an impediment because one can become materially attached. So therefore in Grihastha ashram, then one has to be quite strict also to follow properly, and then one can succeed. We could say that, of course, naturally, if one is detached, then it's easier. But then, according to people's qualifications, some people are not so detached, so therefore they follow Grihastha ashram, and still they can practice and succeed as well.
In ISKCON, Maharaj, we see that we are not actually following the ashramas that way, that one remains a brahmachari and then one should ideally become a grihastha. So usually there is, I don't know, some kind of understanding of a brahmachari. Try to continue as long as you can being a brahmachari.
Uh-huh.
And then, so we see that some devotees are successful. But then we see also cases where devotees at 40, 45, very late in their lives, they enter into grahastha ashram, which is actually not the right age, especially given our short lifespans. And so, I mean, don't we see that this ashramas, actually they're enforced that way, that 25, 30 years brahmachari, then you enter grahastha, and then you, I mean, so entering, what I'm saying is that if they enter the grahastha ashram at the right age, that's fine. Otherwise they don't enter. But we see that there are cases, and not few, quite a few cases where, you know, brahmacharis decide to change their ashram much later.
on. Yeah. So what's the point?
So, I mean, is that the right age to enter that ashram?
Well, obviously, it's not we got anomaly. It's not the regular course of events. Of course, in the varnashram system, the brahmachari had option. He could remain a brahmachari for life. He could become a sannyasi, or he could become a grihastha. He had three options. We could say the default option was after graduation from the Gurukul at the age of maybe 25, then they would get married. So that was the default option. Of course, in the modern world, not in the modern world, let's say even in Lord Chaitanya's time on, it didn't look like there were too many brahmacharis around. There was no gurukuls, not that many gurukuls around, even in Lord Chaitanya's time. They all lived in their houses and just went to study, came back, and so there weren't. Probably in South India there were some, but in Navadvip, no, it doesn't look like there are any brahmacharis at all there. Yeah, there are two out of that. Out of the whole of Lord Chaitanya's group, we have two brahmacharis, which is a little unusual, eh? So it looked like it was a little bit unusual even then to have brahmacharis in North India or in East India at least. I don't know about North or South, probably was more common. But even then, I think it was only, probably, I don't know how many percent of the Brahmins sent their children to a Gurukul. I don't know how many. What percentage? Half, quarter, 10% even at that time? I don't know. It's hard to say. Nowadays, of course, nobody sends, so a little different. So the whole structure has changed. The society's also changed, so it's very, very difficult to make a rule one way or the other. But let's say to change at a later age is maybe irregular, but at the same time, maybe there's no option for it. But what's the other option? So it's better than, artificially maintaining that status, so maybe better to change. So what can be done?
No,
of course, the other thing is to encourage people earlier on to make a decision like that and not force them into brahmacharya. So they shouldn't be forced in any case. It is a free decision, and at any time they have the option of, getting married and whatever.
Because Maharaj, we see practical issues there. I mean, they are 45.
Yeah.
So a 25-year-old woman, usually they will not willing to marry them. So because I know cases where their counselors, brahmachari's counselors saying, okay, you married a divorcee, you married women with children. I mean, like that kind of situation comes.
Okay.
And then maybe the woman itself is 35. 40 and the whole thing becomes a little very difficult.
Yeah, so it's a little bit difficult. It becomes difficult as they go on. Yeah. But anyway, ultimately it's their decision, so they have to live with that. The difficulties that ensue from it also.
Hopefully they will not blame Maharaj that they were that the environment when they were actually becoming brahmacharis and when they lived in the ashram, they should not say that I don't know, they cannot blame for guidance. I mean, but if there is some kind of an inspiration, basically devotees remain brahmachari because they are inspired.
Yeah.
Not by force.
Yeah.
So they say that kind of inspiration was there, but 20 years down the line, that inspiration weaned out and...
whatever. So...
what to do now, whether I should remain in brahmachari or grahastha. In the olden days, 25 years Gurukul, then they go to, but in Kali Yuga, a brahmachari joins at the age of 30. So his brahmachari starts from 30. If you calculate that, at 45 he feels like getting married. And
when he wants to
brahmachari
get married,
associates
it's
with
time to
grahastha.
renounce. At 45 or 50 is the renunciation. It's a lot of prostage.
Also, we know that when we associate with somebody, we take those guna. Most of surrounding the brahmachari is full of grahasthas. So obviously, if he has a weak mind, he will also feel that let me also become a grahastha.
Yeah. So
Unless they're taken to Himalayas or in a hermitage like Gurukul,
Yeah.
completely cut off from all the externals.
yeah, so it is more difficult, and we say in modern society also it becomes more difficult to do that because of the environment. The environment is not so favorable for it.
My question is, why we give a saffron dress for a brahmachari? Because we know that, because in South India, the saffron
Sannyasi.
means. So when somebody goes from saffron to white, they think it's a fall down.
Yeah.
And a fallen brahmachari will feel like I'm a fallen grahastha. And his offsprings also will be in that mentality.
Well, I think Prabhupada instituted that, but and I think Gaudiya Math, to some degree, when they're very elder brahmacharis, they give them, but the younger ones they don't. Yeah, so maybe that could be instituted in ISKCON also. I don't know.
All the experiences happening in ISKCON now, is there any direction for the future as a managerial body?
Yes.
With all that's happening over the last 15, 20 years in terms of ashram, ISKCON
Yeah.
managerially has any direction
I
largely?
don't think they've discussed it too much, as far as I know. Not much. Yeah. I don't think so. Yeah, especially in the West, because they don't make any brahmacharis anyway in the West. So it's only in India it's a thing. India they should discuss. Actually, probably they're discussing that now, but in the West it wasn't so much a discussion because over the last 20 years there's not that many brahmacharis anyway.
Useful because people think it's Buddhist monk and they buy the books and all.
Oh.
I heard many of the European devotees, with the new bhaktas, they wear saffron and go. So people think he's a yogi or then people interact much instead of going in a white dress. Just for namesake. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was also telling that brahmachari should wear white. Only Prabhupada started.
I don't know if he did that, but I know unless they're senior, they don't wear that orange cloth. Only the seniors wear it.
स्तम्भपर्यन्तं सर्वं मायामयं जगत् सत्यं सत्यं पुनः सत्यं हरे नामैव केवलम् पिता चापि सा माता बन्धवोऽपि स शिक्षये चेत् सदा स्मर्तुं हरेर्नामैव केवलम् निश्वासेन हि विश्वासः कदा रुद्धो भविष्यति कीर्तनीयामतो बाल्यात् हरेर्नामैव केवलम् सदा वसेत्तत्र यत्र भागवता जना गायन्ति भक्तिभावेन हरेर्नामैव केवलम् अहो दुःखं महादुःखं दुःखतरं यत् काचार्थं विस्मृतं रत्नं हरेर्नामैव केवलम् नियतां कर्णो नियतां वच गीयतां नित्यं हरेर्नामैव केवलम् त्रिणीकृत्य जगत्सर्वं राजते सकलोपरि चिदानन्दमयं शुद्धं हरेर्नामैव केवलम् मधुरं मधुरेभ्योऽपि मङ्गलेभ्योऽपि मङ्गलम् पावनं पावनेभ्योऽपि हरेर्नामैव केवलम् हरेर्नामैव केवलम् हरेर्नामैव केवलम्